Hello and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. This is Dr. Greer, and I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us here every 2 weeks to bring you an update on what we're doing with the Disclosure Project and the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And you can find out more about what we do at disclosureproject.org and cseti.org. That's cseti.org. And today we have a really great program to bring you an update on what's going on with the Global Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Initiative, or CE-5 initiative. And for those of you who are new to the program, the concept of a close encounter of the fifth kind is one that we began back about 21 years ago in 1990, based on some experiences I had had contact with extraterrestrial civilizations when I was younger. And it's based on the concept that not only are we being visited by intelligent civilizations from elsewhere, and there's abundant evidence for that you can see at disclosureproject.org, but also that they're waiting for an appropriate response from humans, and that if we set up the right conditions and utilize the correct philosophy and ethics and protocols, technical protocols, that we can invite these extraterrestrial civilizations to appear and interact with us in ways that are really quite extraordinary. So a close encounter of the fifth kind is when humans initiate and welcome the contact, as opposed to, say, someone who just by chance sees something flying by or has a sort of chance encounter that's more passive. So it's an active initiative of making contact with these civilizations that we know are already visiting Earth. And of course, there's abundant evidence that they not only are here now, but have been probably involved with the Earth for thousands, if not even millions of years. And that it's time at this point in our history to prepare to become an interplanetary civilization. And so one of the programs that we have is to train people to be ambassadors from Earth to these civilizations. And one of the central concepts around this, which is something I love talking about at the World Puja Network, because the folks at the World Puja Network understand the science of consciousness and the Vedas and the concept behind the Puja. And that is that the mind is non-local and omnipresent, and that every individual is awake by virtue of that same non-local, infinite mind. And that through the practice of meditation techniques, one can access that aspect of one's own self that's omnipresent and remotely view the extraterrestrial civilizations or their spacecraft or their beings, and then invite them to a specific place. And we call them vectoring. And this coherent thought sequencing is a concept where we, after inviting them and seeing where they are, show them exactly where we're located using a very coherent thought, clear imaging and visualization from the expanded state of awareness. And these are all part of a meditation process that we teach, and there's actually a training program at disclosureproject.org that you can get for that on the online service. So the idea here being that extraterrestrial civilizations, by virtue of being able to go faster than the speed of light, have perfected electromagnetically the science of consciousness, and that there are transdimensional technologies that permit extraterrestrial civilizations to pick up this coherent thought that's radiating from an expanded meditative state of awareness as clearly as we pick up a cell phone signal or a radio signal. And that this idea is something which has come about through a number of experiences that initially I began to have when I was about 18 years of age, but which when I began to study the issue, I found that there were people all over the world and throughout history that had initiated contact this way using the science of consciousness and awareness and the non-local aspect of ourselves, which is in this omnipresent field of consciousness. And so that's the central protocol. And then we also use high-powered lasers that we send up, and these electromagnetic tones that were recorded in the crop circles, and also at some CSETI events where we've had extraterrestrial sort of electronic signals that have come around us that we've recorded that we then also send out over radio frequencies. And so these are the three things we use. We use thought, sound, and light to initiate this contact and to invite the extraterrestrial civilizations to come and visit us within this philosophy of a peaceful contact and universal awareness. So that's really what the Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind initiative is. And over the years, initially I started just training a few people to do this and experimenting with it. I had experiences with this when I was a young man, about 18 years of age, and little by little I began to realize, well, this is really intended to be something that everyone can do. And in 1990, I founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and then also the Disclosure Project to bring out all this information. And at this point now, we've trained thousands of people all over the world who are practicing these protocols to make peaceful contact. And the purpose of it is not only in and of itself the value of making contact, but the creation of a new reality, a new paradigm, a new morphogenic field, if you will, where humans present themselves to the cosmos and to these civilizations as enlightened and peaceful beings rather than people firing missiles at them. And I think that this is a very important distinction, and that is during the modern era, most people have either denied the existence of the evidence that we're being visited, or the response has been very secretive and very militarized. What we're doing is another path, and that's open acknowledgement and an enlightened approach using awareness and consciousness to make direct and open contact with people who are citizen diplomats. And in that sense, while we have no official standing, we feel that this is something that's very important for people to initiate because no one else is doing it. We do not have an initiative like this that's being done from the United Nations or from the State Department. To my knowledge, Hillary Clinton hasn't begun to do this. Therefore, it's important that we, the people, do it. And so many people have had sightings or contact with extraterrestrial civilizations or their spacecraft or their beings, and yet there has not been an organized response that's been peaceful. And that's really what this is. And now it's becoming a global effort involving many people from every continent. In fact, in recent weeks, we were just in the California desert, and we had people from Malaysia and from Germany and from all over Europe and the United States and Canada at this gathering. And what you find is that this is something that is an idea that most people think is very difficult, but when you go out and actually go out into the stars with a few people and begin to do it, magic happens, because the extraterrestrial civilizations really do want to make contact. They're waiting for us to answer the call. And they're not going to sit here and force us to, but they're waiting for an appropriate response. And we find that when we put a little effort in that direction, it's sort of like the doors all fling open. And this is why people are so astonished that, you know, they'll come. I'm thinking of one couple that came from New York. One was a police woman and one was a firefighter in New York City. And they came a few weeks ago, and after the first night of being out, there were these extraterrestrial beings that came back into their hotel room as these luminous orbs and beings that were in the room till 5:30 in the morning. And they were so astonished they could barely contain themselves at the next afternoon we got together for a meeting, because this was such a clear and a beautiful contact that happened. And what we find is that when people are pure-hearted and open-minded about this, that these civilizations are eager to find humans who are willing to build a bridge between our culture and our world and their world. And it's because we're preparing for this time when we're going to enter into a period of not only world peace but universal peace, where eventually humans will be, in fact, interstellar. And that's looking down the road a bit. But at this stage, it has to start somewhere, and this is where we feel it should start, and that's with a very grassroots sort of citizens diplomatic effort. And perhaps it's just as well that the political establishment isn't doing this, and it's right that we should lead this effort rather than a bureaucracy. So that's just sort of a background overview of what we're doing and how we're doing it. We can get into it further, but I'd like to introduce a wonderful man, Kosta. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. It's a pleasure.
And Kosta's been really heading up this global CE-5 initiative and helping coordinate events from people all over the world. And Kosta, why don't you share a little bit about what you've been doing and the kind of responses you've been getting?
Absolutely. It's been an incredible journey, Steve. We contacted many of the people that you had educated over the years in using your protocols, and we found there was a great deal of enthusiasm for doing a coordinated approach. And so I thought that a monthly event, choosing a 24-hour period, would be an appropriate time to capture every time zone and to let a lot of people become aware that we could all join together and use the CE-5 protocols as a group. And so that's what started about last September of 2010. And currently, on any given month, we have anywhere from 50 to 90 teams that are spread out over a couple dozen U.S. states and as many different international countries. And we speak different languages, but when it comes to consciousness, we're all on the same page and understand each other and have some remarkable experiences. We join in and kind of amplify our efforts as a group, doing so much more than any individual team might be able to do, and feeling a sense of connectedness. As a part of that monthly effort that we've been undertaking, I encourage people to email me with any interactive reports that they might have of their experience. And that's been pretty successful. We'll get sometimes couple dozen different experiences, and I collect those and publish them to the rest of the group so that we can kind of form a group consciousness and an appreciation for what each of us has been experiencing, even though we don't know each other really, except in some rare cases, but we share this common experience, and it's really inspiring for everybody.
Yeah, and the one of the things about this, of course, everyone who has studied the science of consciousness understands the concept of well, it used to be called the 100th monkey effect, and then Rupert Sheldrake talked about the morphogenic field, and that is when a certain number of people begin to do any act, it potentiates within non-locality of consciousness that pattern, and then it replicates that pattern non-locally, so that, for example, there can be a group of, they've done studies with monkeys on an island where they learn a certain skill, and then spontaneously monkeys on another island will begin to know how to do the same skill, even though there's been no direct communication or contact, and it's because of this non-local aspect of consciousness. And when we look at having people all over the world doing this within this structure of going into deep meditation, remote viewing, and making contact, it's very important, because what I feel is the most important part of this, beyond any sort of phenomenal event, such as a sighting or anything that might be known at the moment and seen at the moment, is that it's actually building and potentiating this shift where we go from a world that's in denial about all this, or approaching it in a sort of xenophobic and incorrect way, to approaching it in a way that's peaceful and conscious and enlightened. And that, I think, is one of the most powerful aspects of what you're doing with that, and what we're trying to work on.
That's true. You touched on an interesting point, and that is that getting beyond the phenomenological aspects. I'll get that right. That's all well and good. Many people do have sightings, and some of them are quite remarkable. Armadas of ships that scintillate, that interact with their lasers. But equally, over and above that, is the experience of interaction, of contacting these spiritual intelligences and realizing that they really want our world to join them in the universal peace that they have found in their civilizations. And so we are co-creating with them, and that's one thing that I try to emphasize to our teams, that it's wonderful, again, to report the actual sightings, but we're just thrilled to hear when actual contact, either telepathically is made, or it's made in a sense of feeling a presence or getting communicated to in yet another way. We know we've made a contact then, and we know that the idea is that we want to cooperate with them because they have wisdom and solutions to problems that they can offer us, not to do it for us, but to gain our enthusiasm and our cooperation so that we can help lift ourselves as human beings up to them and up to the stars, and as you mentioned, become an interstellar species ourselves eventually. So we're right on the edge there of creating the future that we really want, and it's important that we keep visualizing that.
Well, and the other thing is that people have to understand, once you drill down on the concepts of non-locality of awareness, and that there is complete integration of every point in space and time with every other point in space and time by virtue of this conscious, intelligent aspect of reality, that nothing is separate. And, the sort of reductionist, more modern Western scientific approach is sort of a very separatist view of the cosmos, where to go from here to the Andromeda galaxy is, it's 2.5 million light years. So even at the speed of light, it would take 2.5 million years one way. So it's round trip. It's 5 million years of traveling, even if you could go the speed of light, and blah, blah, blah. And the Andromeda galaxy is the closest galaxy to our Milky Way galaxy. In reality, there are transdimensional sciences and technologies that are increasingly non-local. The ultimate non-local science is awareness itself, and all the Vedic masters know that. But between the absolute field of pure mind and linear space-time, there's a lot of gradations of dimensions and energies that can be used, including coherent thought and remote viewing and other sciences. And, of course, extraterrestrial civilizations have, faster than the speed of light, electromagnetic-related communication and transportation systems. And they literally drop out of linear space-time. But what that also means is that the old saying, as below, so above, and as above, so below, that there's no separation between Earth and these other star systems from the level of consciousness. And so what happens on this planet is of consequence. It's not just of consequence to Earth, it's of consequence to other civilizations. And it's not only from the point of view of sort of an interstellar relations point of view, because if we go sideways and start traveling amongst the stars with weapon systems and a war mindset, that's a threat to other worlds. But even what we do in consciousness and thought and what we do on this planet, whether we heal it, whether we live peacefully, or whether we engage in massive warfare, that affects these other dimensions and other worlds, which we may not think of as being directly related to us. But if you understand the concept of awareness as this infinite kind of communication system that's the cosmic universal communicator, there is no separation in space and time. That's an illusion. And therefore, what we do on this planet really does have an effect. And therefore, if there are a lot of people who begin to learn these principles and reach out to these civilizations in a peaceful manner, this has an effect that is beyond what we can measure. It is more than anything linear will ever see and report. And so we can only kind of dimly get a sense of what value it may have. And I have always felt that that's why when we have gone up from the very first time in 1991, 92, I began to take people out. And in the old days, in my naivete, actually, I really thought everyone could just sit down and go into samadhi and remote view, and that would be that. But, there wasn't the sort of training programs we have now. But what I found was that people who were sincerely interested in this, when they would come out with us and sit in meditation, go into this cosmic awareness and become a cosmic being, that within, invariably, there would be sightings of ET craft, beings, all kinds of transdimensional manifestations. And in a way, it surprised me because I thought, well, these were some experiences I had had individually. I'd heard of other people having them privately, but to have it as a group, this is another order of magnitude. And then not only to do it then as a group, but now we're doing it globally through what you're doing. And I think this is such a huge step forward. I have to thank you. And also that this is really the next phase where this becomes a global phenomenon of contact, open contact. And the more people who understand this and practice it, the more it will pull our civilization towards the alignment of universal peace and interstellar relationships that are positive. And that's what we have to work towards.
It's true that that is I think a major goal there. It was said in one message that one of our members received telepathically from an ET contact that she had made. She was told that not only are they eager to appear and show themselves and communicate, but the more of us that join together as we grow this group and this effort to contact them, the more that they will be invited and show themselves in more places, in more volume, more frequently.
Right.
And then they said that once they do that, they realize that more human beings will, as a consequence, become more knowledgeable and interested and want to join. So they will then put their effort and add to what's already there, thus allowing even more ET interaction to show up.
And this is the difference between what's going on with these civilizations and, say, our invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. A lot of people, I remember when Larry King asked me, well, why don't they just land on the White House lawn, and why don't they just force I said, no. They're much wiser than that. My God. And we're talking about civilizations that have been around for thousands and in some cases millions of years longer than human civilization has been. And so there's a level of knowledge and experience, and so they're not going to force that. They're waiting for us to awaken to transdimensional reality, interstellar reality, that we're not alone. And there are only a few situations in which I think there would be any kind of direct and overt intervention. One of them, which was quite clear during the Cold War, was when we were at the risk of going to mutual assured destruction in an intercontinental ballistic missile release, where releasing tens of thousands of ICBMs would destroy all life on Earth. I think there are certain situations that are extreme that would result in an intervention of this type, but otherwise, accepting that, and those are extreme exceptions, they're really wanting humans to prepare for contact, make the contact, and do it openly and willingly. So it's not this sort of, everyone views this as sort of alien invasion, blah, blah. I said, no, it's not alien invasion anything. It's extraterrestrial contact within the concept of they're waiting for humans to awaken and to then willingly engage in open contact. Because clearly, if they wanted to just force the issue, they could. There's no question that if you've got the ability to travel faster than the speed of light amongst the stars, they could just simply take over our command and control centers and neutralize every weapon system on Earth and do all this. But they know that civilizations such as ours will not learn if they're just simply taken over. We have to evolve through this, and we have to grow through this. But we also have to evolve into a willing and open acceptance that we're not alone in the universe and that we're willing to make open contact with them willingly, so that it's truly a multilateral, open initiative. And that's why we call it a Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind initiative, where we are inviting and initiating the contact openly, but with the understanding of higher states of consciousness and transdimensional reality, and all the ways that manifests, as we've talked about before on this program, that, for example, a couple weeks ago when we were in the California desert, we had amazing contact with magnetic field meters that out in the middle of this 700,000-acre wilderness would begin to go off when there was an ET that would enter the circle, literally within feet or standing amongst us. And you could see the sort of energy field, and the magnetic meters would flux, and then some of the photography will show these luminous forms around us. And this is something where people say, well, gee, do they ever fully materialize in three-dimensional space-time? The answer is yes. But at the same time, they don't have to. They can be in all these different dimensions, as it were, much like your astral body of light, and they can interface, however, with our electronics or with our cameras or with our persons and with our awareness in ways that are not exactly what you would expect in a Hollywood movie. In fact, it's more wondrous and more amazing. And once people learn that and know what to look for, then they begin to realize, oh my gosh, there's all kinds of ways contact can happen. Everything from a craft that, well, the last night that we were out in this wilderness, we had two gorgeous extraterrestrial vehicles that we did film that materialized in the east-southeast. That one was sort of bluish-white, and one was sort of a golden, beautiful amber golden color. And they just hovered there for some time, and then they moved off towards the east. And everyone saw this. And it was almost like it was their send-off for us, because it was our last night. We had just done a puja, in fact, at sunset, where I'd done a Sanskrit puja, and then we had meditated for about half an hour and did the protocols for contact, and these two gorgeous, almost like celestial jewel-like craft showed up together, and then they moved together as if it wasn't one craft, but they moved in complete tandem, like they were completely synchronized craft in how they moved. It was beautiful. And so it can happen on many, many levels, and this is what we're hearing from these reports and from folks around the world. I don't know, Kosta, if you'd like to share some of these accounts that you've gotten here recently, it'd be great for people to hear it.
Yeah, I have one. It's not very long, but I would like to offer it in the words of the person who actually wrote it, since it comes more authentic that way.
Sure.
This particular report said, last night was a great contact for us in foggy Nova Scotia. We had 6 of us in total. We began by broadcasting the tones and lasers from 6:30 until dark. We did the structure of the universe meditation around 8 p.m. We had no expectations given it was completely foggy. The weather situation was a warm, humid southerly flow. We were high up right at the coast. The fog was definitely being helped by the upslope flow. Since I'm a meteorologist, I would expect conditions to get worse as the night went on. The forecast was 0 chance of seeing the stars, from my perspective. After our meditation, we were using the lasers and just observing. All of a sudden, we started seeing lights which we realized were stars. A very large hole opened up right over us,
right,
almost like we were in a vortex, with walls of cloud extending vertically around us. All around was thick fog. However, above us was a circle of clear sky. More or less in the center of the circle was a star-like object that moved. As we tried to interact with our lasers, it responded. All kinds of erratic movements, zigzag, phase in and phase out. The ETs did find us. They cut a hole in the clouds to put on a beautiful display of motion through the sky above us. After 10 minutes, the hole in the sky just quickly filled in, and the fog came back. There you have an example of
awesome,
a very deliberate experience. You can't make this stuff up.
Oh, I know. And this is what's wonderful, is that exact experience, and I don't even know if the people, if I know any of these folks, some of the people who do this all over the world, many of whom I have never met, we have had that happen all over the world for 20 years, where we'll be in England or we'll be in some place where it's completely cloudy and foggy, and there will be a completely perfect ring or circle open up above us, and it's like it's walled, and it stays there for a prolonged period of time, and then there's all this contact that happens within that area, and it's the only area that has opened up, and it's literally a type of phenomenon that we've experienced dozens and dozens of times. And the first time people see it, they go, this is impossible. How is this happening? And it's actually quite beautiful, and then there'll be a craft that will appear or some object that will come down. And it's really wonderful because we may have a hard time as meteorologists or early 21st century scientists explaining how that can happen. But when you're dealing with technologies that these civilizations have that can go beyond the speed of light and enter into linear space-time from other dimensions, all kinds of amazing things can happen that would sound like magic. But the wonderful thing about people, at the World Puja Network and the feedback we get is that people who've studied the Vedas and understand the Vedic cities, the Siddhis, they understand the concepts of materialization and dematerialization and alteration of space and bilocation and objects going straight through solid objects, or masters that could walk through walls and levitate and all of these things. Well, all of those Vedic powers and cities are actually things that can be done with consciousness, but they can also be done with very advanced technological systems from civilizations that go beyond the speed of light. I call it the crossing point of light into these other dimensions, and they can create this kind of amazing phenomenon both with the weather or with other things that are in nature. One of the things we had happened a couple weeks ago when we were in the desert is that it was a very windy night, and I mean, at ground level it was 20, 30 mile per hour winds, which was not exactly pleasant. But up, where the clouds would be, it would have been probably 50, 60 knots or more. And there was this one cloud that looked exactly like a disk, a UFO, that was in the west, very near us, very low, and it just hovered there for 45 minutes. Well, there was no other cloud in the sky doing anything like this. And so then the question becomes, what in the heck was that? And everyone saw this. In fact, we filmed it. Another time, I think it was last year, at Shasta, there was we were in front of Mount Shasta, and we were having all these amazing objects and lights that we had been filming coming from inside the mountain and coming towards us, and things that lit up in the field around us, and beautiful lights. And then suddenly the CSETI logo is a triangle, three circles making a triangle, which was based on a crop circle that we visualized and that the ETs made in a crop circle in 1992, I believe it was. And here this cloud, quote unquote, makes a perfect equilateral triangle and it's floating there in front of Mount Shasta. I mean, this is bizarre. And everyone sees it. We film it and take photos of it. And so you begin to realize that there are all kinds of ways that these extraterrestrial civilizations can manifest that are poetic and beautiful and artistic and conscious, and in ways that are also, I might add, safe, because we know that there are military systems that track them and have tried to target them. But these are manifestations that can't be targeted. And that's what's so amazing, is that we're learning that these civilizations will make contact no matter what the conditions are, even in a fog like that. And they can do it when the group is coherent and in this state of consciousness, and then it just happens. It's beautiful.
We've had reports like that over and over again, Steve. It's just amazing that no matter where people are, out in the field, maybe on their back porch, in their bedroom, sitting in a car pulled off on the side of the road, and even when it might be near, let's say, a military installation where you would expect there would be suppression of any kind of activity, there always seems to be a way that our ET friends do find to let us know that they're there and that we can interact. Sometimes it's in more limited or ways that we don't expect, but suddenly when we realize that they found a way, then the enthusiasm and the joy is really there. And so that's why we get a variety of reports of people, no matter where they are or what conditions, even in snow and in sleet. There's a way. There's maybe a touch on the shoulder, a wiggle of the nose sometimes, the feeling of a presence, thoughts. it just goes on and on. They're really not limited by our imaginations, and that's a good thing.
Right, exactly. And what we have found is that one of the reasons we have developed these electronic systems that we bring out with us is that we have found that they can go within the circuitry of an electronic device, such as a tri-field meter, a magnetometer, or something, and you can be out in this wilderness area, and they will go into the circuitry and begin to talk. Literally, I mean, we played this a few times on this show, but you have to hear it and be there to believe it, because it is actually expressive and emotional talking. Although it's tones coming from the beeping of this thing, but it isn't like it's not at all like these devices make when you say go up and hold it up to a magnetic motor or to a police radar gun or something like that. It's very nuanced, it's very specific, and actually if you go into a deep state of consciousness, you can link up to these tonalities and actually get the message or the feeling of what they're communicating. And this is sort of a electronically assisted trans-dimensional communication that's happened with even things that are as common as radar detectors and magnetometers. And it's amazing when people hear it for the first time, they're going, well, what is this? And we have, documented this. It's been increasing over the last 3 or 4 years, and in the last year in particular, it's really become extremely prominent. My sense is that this is an indication that global open contact is increasingly likely, and that there needs to be, in every locality around the world, people understand what these protocols are and what to do, so that people aren't just running around like chickens with their heads cut off or screaming the sky is falling. And I think it's really very important for people to understand that we're at this pivotal, transformative moment in human history, and there's a lot of things that can go well and a lot of things that can go wrong, but that the extraterrestrial civilizations are here and they are becoming more present, not less. And I remember a meeting with a very highly placed scientist in the U.S. government who's one of the highest-ranking scientists in Washington in the last year. And he was telling me about this Defense Intelligence Agency general who had no knowledge of this subject and had come out of a briefing in the past year or so where he had been shown images of extraterrestrial vehicles that were in our solar system that were miles across, I mean, enormous. And he was just ashen and just like, oh my God, this is really here. And of course, to a military person, it's all they think of is a threat. But of course, we realize that they're here because they know that the time for transformation on this planet, with all the attendant perhaps chaos that could go along with it, and the time of us establishing a universally peaceful civilization that can go amongst the stars is very, very close at hand. And that's why these experiences are going up exponentially with people all over the world who are learning how to do these protocols, because it isn't difficult to learn, and B, I tell everyone that if you're conscious and awake and you can sit and learn these meditation techniques, you can initiate this sort of contact, and it is not at all difficult. One of the things that I've always been wary of is the guru culture. Guru just means teacher, but where people think that, well, only certain special people can do these things, and I completely reject that. I think we have to realize that we're at a time where everybody can realize their potential as universal beings and as cosmically aware beings, and that is the stage where we are now, where we're bringing this out of the caves and the monasteries and the sort of secret societies to where everyone needs to understand that we're conscious and aware and can become enlightened beings making open contact with these interstellar civilizations. And I think in thousands of years ago, the so-called primitive societies did exactly that. And it was very commonplace for there to be contact and open contact with a tribe or a people and what they call the people from the stars. In fact, I'm looking here out at the Shenandoah National Park, and the word Shenandoah is thought to translate roughly as daughter from the stars, or our daughters from the stars. And in the Cherokee tradition, they're thought to have had contact with or descended from people from the Pleiades, and on it goes. And of course, there's been many accounts. And I think that what we're learning now is that in this sort of high-tech age we live in, that we are entering into an interconnected global society that's not quite peaceful and functional yet, admittedly, but we're going to get there. And when we do, then the next step, and it'll be fairly quick, will be interplanetary. And so they're here preparing for that, and we're here preparing for that, and that's a big part of what's happening. It's very, very exciting, because I have found that when people make one little effort in this direction, all kinds of amazing things happen, like this group up in Nova Scotia, their experience. So I don't know, are there other things you want to share from the recent?
Well, I want to share, one personal one with myself and a couple of friends. As you were talking, Steve, about how this is no longer the realm of, say, the priests and all that. Common people like ourselves, in a very simple, rational way and loving way, can make the contact ourselves, of course, and this is what you've been teaching all these years. But most recently, we've been trying some experiments, believe it or not, computer to computer, using Skype. And as we've talked to someone else across the world or across the country and did our meditation and invited our friends, we would hear over the speakers of our laptops in 2 or 3 locations, spread geographically apart. They would start making their sounds through the speakers.
Right.
And it wasn't just interference. It was very clear chirps and other kinds of noises I can't even describe, but they were in response to our thoughts. We might say something in our conversation that was interesting, and we would hear a chirp almost as if it were an acknowledgement of what was said. And we've been carrying on these kinds of conversations for half an hour at a time. What would be ideal would be to hear a synthesized voice come through, and we're hoping that in time, as we continue this kind of contact, that maybe our ET friends will manifest that way.
Well, actually, that did happen to a couple of years ago. It was actually not synthesized. We actually had a very clear ET voice that was heard when we were in Orange County up near Lake Irvine. And we were out in this remote area, and suddenly, it just in the air about 3 or 4 feet in front of us, there was a voice, as if it was coming from an electronic device that was dematerialized, that started to speak right in front of us. And we actually got a few syllables of it recorded on a tape recorder that was running at the time. And this has happened at other times. One of the things that happened, about 2 years ago when we were in Joshua Tree National Park, we had this sphere that materialized beside us. And we were walking back. We were at a break from our meditation circle, and we were walking back to the circle, and this appeared, and I realized, of course, it was extraterrestrial beings that were in this sort of sphere orb, and in a transdimensional way, because they're folded within space and time, and it was visible. I mean, Linda Willits and myself, a couple of people saw it. It just materialized right there, maybe 5 feet from us. And so I invited them to come back to the circle. When we came back to the circle, we were standing, and over towards this sort of southwest of the circle, but maybe 10 feet outside where our circle was, we were all still standing around. We heard 3 or 4 extraterrestrial voices. We didn't understand what it was. We could just hear the talking. And I looked with these night scopes I have that are very, very excellent, almost 4th generation, military grade. And you have to do all the Homeland Security paperwork to get them. And I looked over where we were hearing this talking. There was nobody there. It was this empty desert. And that's when we realized, and that's when Raven felt that she should take a photograph, and this picture of this being is floating, and there's an orb, and it flashes in very quickly, and there's this being that's there floating right outside the circle. And you really need a high-definition screen to see the quality of it, but it's an electronic sort of astral projection, but it's picked up by a camera, so it wasn't there just in the mental field. It was there electromagnetically, and it's a person. You can see the head and the shoulders and the legs and the hands and the eyes and everything, and so this was something that was heard, and I liken this to sort of a electronic astral projection. It's like people who've learned how to travel with their bodies of light. These extraterrestrial civilizations have electronics that permit this sort of trans-dimensional manifestation and travel where they're there. They can be dematerialized in an instant. I mean, in a snap, they can appear, and that's what was filmed on this camera, and it's really an amazing picture. It's at cseti.org, cseti.org, for those of you who want to see it. And these are the kinds of experiences happening more and more, and including where you hear voices speaking, and multiple people will hear it. Now, frequently it'll be something that you won't know what it is, and so in the meditative state, luckily the universal translator is consciousness, and then, whether it's English or Andromedan, I mean, I don't know. There is the ability to apprehend and comprehend and sense what is being communicated, which is something that can be practiced. Same thing with these electronic devices that begin to make these patterns of speaking. Even though you're out in a remote area, and all of a sudden they will start doing this very specific pattern, and it's intelligent and it's intelligible. Ironically, the SETI project is spending millions and millions of dollars with their big radio telescopes and claim they have nothing. We're sitting out in the desert in these remote areas with electronic devices that cost, $50 or $100 or $150, and we're getting all this amazing sort of contact happen. So, there's a sort of a delicious and ironic poetry in all of that, I think. And yes, and so these sort of contacts can happen in all kinds of astonishing ways, and it's interesting to hear that you've had it happen with these Skype experience.
Yeah, Skype is accessible to everybody. You're right. With a small laptop and just a little bit of time and patience, you're in contact like that, and it's really wonderful to behold. The sense of joy you get when you realize it's not random noise or interference or anything is just palpable. And I think it helps with the unity consciousness, and sometimes you'll feel them in the room as a result, the presence there. Some people are very kinesthetic in that way, and they'll get that as well. So they can contact us on multiple levels simultaneously, and that's not random. That's very deliberate.
Right, and I think the other part of it is that people have to understand that contact can happen as a group, and then often what we'll do is that we'll ask that there be an ambassador from their worlds that will make contact with the individuals, and then after the group process is over and we leave for the night at usually 1 or 1:30 in the morning, people will then have these experiences driving back in their cars. They'll go back to their rooms, and they'll have these beings that will appear. And it can also happen in dream time. And one of the things that people have to understand is the lost art of the lucid dream. And that if you're dealing with civilizations that go faster than the speed of light, and they interface with the thought realm, even electromagnetically, then a very efficient way to have contact is within lucid dream state, or within the state between waking and dreaming, where you can sort of be in what's been called the hypnagogic state, where you're very, very relaxed, but the deep meditative state also. And it makes complete sense that this would be the case, because while that may not be something that we accept generally in our society, because we're still very locked into linear space-time, speed-of-light concepts, even that is changing. In the last few months at CERN, they found that the neutron part, neutrinos are going faster than the speed of light, and that this was something not thought to be possible. And in fact, just a few months before that, the Japanese physicists had said nothing can go faster than the speed of light. We've proven it. And then CERN comes out with this thing. Well, in reality, there are phase dimensions that can be folded with any volume of what we call space, where there are multitude of refined frequencies beyond the speed of light. And that includes awareness, the thought realm, and a lot of interesting things in between. And this is exactly the domain of interstellar civilizations. Why? Because you cannot communicate or travel at the speed of light if you're going amongst stars. It's just too slow. And so once you get your mind around that, then you understand the primacy of the science of consciousness and the knowledge of the Vedas and this ancient knowledge that's in all cultures about consciousness and mind, and that is a very essential part of the contact protocols, because it relates very directly to the reality of an interstellar transdimensional civilization. Because if they're really able to get here from another star system, they're simply not going to be using things like the space shuttle or something that's going 25,000 miles per hour, because it would take millions of years to traverse the distances of interstellar space. And so once you realize that, well, we are being visited by these civilizations and have been forever, then you have to then adapt your scientific paradigm to include the science of consciousness and transdimensional sciences. And that's what we're applying out under the stars together. And it's very exciting, because once you see that can happen and you make the connection with these beings who are very, very non-invasive. I mean, they only come as you invite them. And what you find at that point is that if you do invite them, they will come in ways that may not be what you're expecting from having looked at too many Hollywood movies, but will be actually more elegant and nuanced and profound. And that's what people are experiencing all over the world as they begin to open to this reality.
And I have to say that one of the things that people need to get over, and I know this is something you've always talked about, Stephen, is the fear thing. The Hollywood culture, the movies have set up that vibration of invasion and alienness and strangeness to titillate people and to separate them from what the reality really is. And the reality is the ETs are about consciousness and love, compassion, patience with all of us, and once you tune into that vibration, there's no room for fear. That's just something that human beings have generated on Earth to keep the contact from happening. And so that's just something I wanted to stress that we do in our groups every month across the world, is we join in love. And it may sound like a cliche or something very simple, but oh my God, it's a unifying power that holds universes together. And
yes,
when our teams join together in that sense, I know that that's what allows the ETs to find an easy path, an easy connection to us. And, be gone with fear. That's going to be a thing of the past.
Well, yeah, and the fear is driven from the sense of separation, whereas this state of unity, as you know, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's the scene where Arjuna is talking to Krishna on the battlefield, and Krishna says, "A little of this eliminates all fear." And the "this" is with a capital T, and he's referring to this state of pure consciousness, this state of enlightenment. And once you experience that, and you realize that these civilizations, of course, have amazing technological capabilities, and if they were hostile, I said once at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the remains from Roswell were shipped, and I was having a meeting there with the colonel who was in charge of the division over that storage area, and he brought up this issue. He says, well, what if they're not friendly to us? I said, sir, with all due respect, given the fact that when we started trying to shoot these things down, we had vacuum tubes and, we were exploding the first atomic bombs and things like this. I said, if they were hostile, it would have been point set match over about 1945. I said, the fact that we're breathing the free air of Earth, notwithstanding all the stupid things we've done militarily in this area, is a profound testament to their love and their patience and their enlightenment, because clearly, we're talking about civilizations that are in the hundreds of thousands to perhaps millions of years more developed than we are. And if it was just a matter of technological prowess and domination and invasion and all the things that you see in the movies and in frankly, the UFO subculture, it would just simply been over a long time ago. And the fact is that when Stephen Hawking said, "Oh well, we should not try to make contact," a couple years ago, he said, because they would want to come here and invade us and colonize us. That's just an anthropocentric projection, and it's basically us projecting what we've done to each other onto these other civilizations. There's no evidence. First of all, if you understand the cities and the Vedic knowledges and body of knowledge, and the science of consciousness, and combine that with sort of space-age, interstellar, transdimensional technology, there's nothing on this planet that they can't just manifest and materialize. It's absurd that they would need to travel from one star system or galaxy to this one to get anything here. They don't need anything on this planet. What they need is peace and cooperation and growth together and enlightenment. And so these are values that are very, very different from this sort of avaricious paranoia that then sort of infects our society today. But this too shall pass. I mean, this is a phase that we just have to sort of put behind us and move forward. And when you're making contact, the key thing is, as you said, is to go into this state of oneness and love that's beyond all fear, and then it's just amazing what can happen. And I think one of the reasons why this subject has been portrayed in really scary ways is that the intelligence community knows that if people are afraid, they won't go out and make contact. But if they go beyond their fear, they will and they can. And this is what's awesome, is that when you realize that you can transcend those limitations and go into this higher state of awareness and this meditative states, and contact can happen, then anything is possible, and there's no force on earth that can stop it. And that's what's wonderful, and that's the real message of, I think, the global CE-5 initiative, is that people are doing this all over the world, and contact is happening, and it will continue to happen and accelerate in the coming months and years.
That's right, and we'll be there. We continue to grow and invite people to join us.
Indeed. Well, I think we're out of time. I'd like to thank you, Kosta, for all of your work in coordinating these teams, and anyone who is. Why don't you tell people how they can get hold of you if they want to participate in this?
GCE5.org is just a small homepage that will allow you to subscribe. Put in your email and supply to us, and then I can contact you and give you information on what we do and how we do it, and invite you to join.
And those of you who want the training program, that's at disclosureproject.org. And if you want to join us under the stars, I'm going to be having another expedition with folks in Florida on Marco Island on the Gulf of Mexico in April, and those of you who want to join us, you can find out about that at cseti.org. It's going to be April 14th to the 21st there. It's a beautiful place, and a place where we had amazing contact last winter. So if you'd like to join us there, you can find out more about that at cseti.org. So look forward to seeing you under the stars. And again, thank you, Kosta. And I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us here. It's wonderful to share this information with your listeners.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.